This discussion is about one part of practicing the presence of God that we are to do every week. It's called the Sabbath Rest. The word Sabbath literally means rest. It means a time that we take off. Normally, that period is about 24 hours. The Jewish Sabbath usually started at sundown and went to the following sundown. The Christian Sabbath or Sunday usually runs from the beginning on Sunday morning to Monday morning, but it needs to be a 24-hour period whenever it's kept. It is a day for enjoyment of God's creation. It's a day for us to sit back and enjoy what God has done. It is not intended to be legalistic at all. We can't tell another person how they are to keep the Sabbath. The Sabbath is supposed to be a blessing, not a burden. It is a day for worship. On the Sabbath day, normally, we gather together with other believers and worship God. I say normally because, as we shall see, there are exceptions to that. It is a day of enjoyment. It is a day for having pleasure and having fun. It is not a day to do nothing, but it is a day to enjoy God's creation. Peter Scazzaro calls it a weekly snow day. Remember when you were a child and it snowed and everything got canceled and you had to stay home and play? Well, the Sabbath is a lot like that. It is a day that we take in the week for enjoyment, like a weekly snow day. The Sabbath was instituted by God as a part of creation. In Genesis 2:1-3, we read, "By the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." As you can see, God took the time to enjoy what he made, and he expects us to do the same. When God gave the Ten Commandments, the Sabbath also became a command of his. Exodus 20:8-11 says, "Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or your daughter, or your manservant or your maidservant, or your animals, nor the alien within your gates. For in 6 days God made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy." The prophets also taught that the Sabbath was to be kept. Isaiah 56:2, "Blessed is the man who does this, the man who holds it fast, who keeps the Sabbath without desecrating it, and keeps his hand from doing any evil." Jeremiah 17:21-25, "Be careful not to carry a load on the Sabbath day or bring it through the gates of Jerusalem. Do not bring a load out of your houses or do any work on the Sabbath, but keep the Sabbath day holy as I commanded your forefathers." Yet they did not listen or pay attention. They were stiff-necked and would not listen or respond to discipline. "But if you are careful to obey me, declares the Lord, and bring no load through the gates of this city in the Sabbath, but keep the Sabbath day holy by not doing any work on it, then God will bless them." One thing we must remember about the Sabbath day is that it is more than simply a day. It is a principle of rest. We see this use in Hebrews 4:9-10. "There remains then a Sabbath, a rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from his own work, just as God did from his." This is important to remember. The day of the Sabbath does not matter so much as the rest of the Sabbath. Some people take Saturday, some people take Sunday for Sabbath. That does not matter. Take your Sabbaths when you can. If you can rest on Saturday, rest on Saturday. If you can rest on Sunday, rest on Sunday. But take your Sabbaths when you can. To be overly concerned about which day of the week the Sabbath is supposed to be violates the spirit of the Sabbath. How can we rest when we are concerned about the day of which day of the week it is. Our minds should be at peace and at rest and enjoying creation, not being contentious or legalistic. In Luke chapter 6, God gives us an example of how not to keep the Sabbath. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples began to pick some heads of grain, rub them in their hands, and eat the kernels. Some of the Pharisees asked, "Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Jesus answered, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? They entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, he ate what is lawful for only priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions." Then Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." Jesus gives us an example of Pharisees who are legalistically concerned about what the disciples are doing working on the Sabbath by rubbing their hands together. Jesus straightens them out and says the Sabbath is for us, not us for the Sabbath. The reason for the rules and regulations regarding the Sabbath are to help us rest, not to force us to rest. When we take the Sabbath legalistically, we miss its purpose and its power. So on the Sabbath, we do no work, make no plans, start no arguments, enjoy God's creation, enjoy our family and friends, and practice mindfulness. That is, the awareness of the creation around us and living in the moment. On the Sabbath day, we also worship. Of course, that's not the only day we worship. We should worship 7 days out of the week. But on the Sabbath day is when we usually gather together with other believers to worship. Here's some thoughts on how it should be. On the Sabbath day, our worship should first of all be restful. It should not be pressured or forced. It should not be something that we have to work to do. It should be something that was easy and naturally. And it should be the crown of the Sabbath. If our worship it does not involve the enjoyment and praising of God and the meeting of God in an enjoyable and delightful way, then we need to rethink our worship. The Sabbath day should be a day of rest and joy. There are other Sabbaths as well. In the Old Testament, we see several. The Bible speaks of Sabbaths, for example, on holy days. Days such as the Day of Atonement and the Passover were considered Sabbaths whenever they fell. There were also Sabbath years, where the land was allowed to lie fallow. There was also the Jubilee years. Every 50 years there was a kind of super Sabbath where all of the land went back to its original owners. Now, the New Testament church does not require holy days. However, in Romans 14, we are told that we have the right to have holy days if we wish. And more Sabbaths can be taken by us and should be taken. For example, holidays are a good opportunity to rest and can be treated as a Sabbath no matter when they fall during the week. Vacations are a kind of Sabbath, a time of rest and refreshment, and we need to take it. And especially for ministers, sabbaticals are a good idea. Every few years, go off for an extended period of time to recharge your batteries and to get ready for God's work. What happens if you can't take a regular Sabbath? There are people, for example, who, no matter what they do, must work on Sunday because of necessity. Policemen, for example, and firemen. And I would include ministers in that number as well because Sunday is usually our busiest day. In those cases, we need to learn about substitute Sabbaths. If we can't take the Sabbath as a day of rest, we need to find another day during the week that we take as a day of rest. If we can't have a regular Sabbath, take another day. But try to follow the rules. Make it a 24-hour period. Make it a day for being mindful and enjoying life. Don't let a week go by without a day of enjoyment in your life. On the Sabbath day, we honor God in our enjoyment of life.